let me pull up this story we have. This is Daily Mail says, sickening YouTube star couple is slammed for comparing abortion to the Holocaust and branding it the world's most deadly killer in pro-love documentary shared with 13 million followers. Cole and Savannah LeBrant have come under fire for contrasting the amount of people who got abortions to the amount who were killed during the Holocaust. You know, the first thing I'm going to mention is frame check.
Yeah.
Do pro-life conservatives find this sickening, and are they slamming them? Or is this the instance of pro-life personalities, large followings, expressing their views, and the left opposing them, calling this? I think the Daily Mail very obviously framed this in a way that makes it appear like everybody's mad about this, but you know, you guys who are more conservative pro-life, I'm curious what you think about this couple.
There's only one reason to be pro-life, and that is that you believe that, the two basic assertions of the pro-life person is that the child in the womb is a human being, and that it's never okay to intentionally and directly murder an innocent human being. And so if you believe both of those things, then you must agree that this Holocaust comparison is valid, because we've got 60 million abortions in the United States with Roe v. Wade. Are those human beings or not? If they're human beings, then that's 60 million humans. That's 60 million people who are killed. And we've never seen the systematic slaughter of 60 million human people before anywhere on Earth. So this is unprecedented.
The 60 million number, is this like what are the stats behind this? Like,
well, what's interesting about in the U.S. abortion in the U.S. is the largest single group of women who have abortions are Black women. I think it's like 36% of abortions are done by Black mothers, and that doesn't count California, I believe. And California has the most abortions in the country, and it doesn't count California because California doesn't keep data on the race of women whose children are aborted. So it does seem to me that there is a genocide against Black babies in this country.
Well, my question is on the statistics about 60 million. I think this is important because the data I saw says that the overwhelming majority of abortions are listed as no reason given. So I'm wondering, of the 60 million abortions, if we're going to say it is slaughter, are some of these, how would you define them? Is this entire 60 million just, abortion as contraception? Are there, medical crises or interventions?
The vast majority of cases. That's like we were talking about, the medical. We don't have to get into it again, but there's never actually a reason to abort a child for medical reasons. But this is like, we could even put all that aside, because that's like 1% of the cases. 99% of cases are essentially abortion for contraception. It's just you don't want the child because you don't feel like having a kid, or because you don't think you can afford the child. So that is.
I really, real quick, because I have a philosophical, ethical, libertarian question about this that I think I'd love to hear your thoughts, Matt. And it's that, personally, I have an issue with government intervention in terms of a person being required to provide their body to another person. And so the conundrum arises with two individuals sharing one body, and then the state determining that one person must provide that body to another person. Typically, the response I get, and I accept, is, well, if a woman chooses to engage in reproductive acts, and then she brings into or harbors life, she has accepted a responsibility in that regard. But then the question of rape arises. If a woman is forced to harbor another person, then the government intervenes and says, we're going to enforce that you will provide your blood and your body to another person. That kind of freaks me out.
Well, I'll respond in general terms, even because what you're talking about, if that principle is true, that you shouldn't be forced to provide your body to another person, and that would apply not just to babies conceived through rape, but to all babies that are conceived, right? So here's the response to that.
That's a challenge.
First of all, it turns out we as human beings are not these autonomous, free individuals who have no responsibilities to anybody else. That's just not the reality. We have responsibilities in society, but especially according to relationship. So that's my problem with when it's framed that way of, you shouldn't be forced to provide your body to somebody. Yeah, I shouldn't be forced to provide like an organ to my neighbor, right. But to my child, like the relationship there carries with it certain responsibilities. So what I would say is, let's take it outside of the womb. Should parents be forced, quote unquote, to care for their babies, or at least to find someone else who will? Like, should it be legal for a mother to say of her 6-month-old baby, I don't really want this baby anymore, and to just like throw the child in a dumpster, or drown the child in a bath, or even just leave the child at home and just go somewhere and leave? We would say, no, you can't do that, because yeah, you don't have a responsibility to the 6-month-old across the street, but that's your child. You're the parent.
There is a difference between something that's directly connected to your bloodstream. And this is why I say I understand and accept the argument that if a person chooses to engage in an action, they have a responsibility. But if someone is forced into that position, I just find it creepy that, a woman can be victimized by someone, then I understand the child is innocent in this regard. I absolutely believe that when it comes to rape. But then for just a person to be told by the state, the being that harbored in your body that is using your blood and nutrients, that was put there by force, you must nurture and nourish.
Here's the thing about that, right? It's not the law necessarily. So we have the laws, we have the state can tell you what, tells you what to do or whatever. But the real problem is that we have a lack of a shared value system. And if we had values that encouraged motherhood and that encouraged valuing life, regardless of what the law is, we would have less abortion, and I think
agree.
that that's really important. We need to encourage motherhood, encourage parenthood,
Cultural.
encourage families. And if we did that, then it doesn't matter what the law said. People wouldn't kill their children. I thought it was great. Actually, I don't know if you guys read Vogue, but I was checking out Vogue and
I read it every day.
right?
Yeah.
And Rihanna is pregnant
Yeah.
and her and ASAP Rocky are having a baby.
It's really
And I thought it
cute.
was really cool how she said, this was an unplanned pregnancy. We weren't trying to have kids. And immediately, as soon as she got the pregnancy test back, they were like, and now we're on this journey. And they went for it. They're not married yet. They're engaged and all of that. But I really thought that it was a very powerful statement for this extremely popular pop star to come out and say, I didn't intend to get pregnant, and I'm having my baby, and I'm stoked about it.
But
I loved that
But
message.
I understand that, but rape is a specific.
Rape is a specific thing, yes.
And it's kind
But
of
you can't
scary.
punish the child for the sins of the
Right.
father. But you can't
Right.
if you
But-
want
but
if you
you
want to
can't
But
punish
you
the
execute.
mother.
can, but the mother is always punished for the sins of the father. That happens all
But
the
you
time.
can't
So
punish the woman.
regardless of
If you
know,
want to execute somebody
that
for rape,
happens
execute the
constantly.
rapist. I'm all about
Well,
that.
no, but
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
if
So now we're going to
well, hold
execute
on.
the father.
Well,
and she's
but-
going to be like
if-
stuck being the
if
single
you-
mother
rapist,
of
if it's a-
Well, if it's a
sure.
rapist, if-
so
So if you
no
if-
rehabilitation
if-
for the guy who
if a
just
person severely
impregnated this
injured,
woman.
if a person severely injures another person, and let's say they're rushed into the hospital and there's two people that are injured, and they say, this guy's heart's failing, hook him up, or this guy's kidney's failing, we're gonna connect their bloodstreams. You wake up like, hey, I didn't do this to this guy, and they say you can't separate because he'll die and you're responsible. And
But
I have nothing to do with this guy.
There are so many differences between abortion and that hypothetical. It's like a famous hypothetical. Judith Jarvis Thompson first had that, and so many differences. Like one is that unplugging yourself from someone in a hospital is different from directly and intentionally killing a baby. Like abortion is not just simply unplugged. It's not you're just like unplugging. You are killing the baby. You are doing something violent. So it would be more analogous to, oh, I don't want to be hooked up to this guy, so I'm going to put a pillow over his face and kill him. And when you start framing it that way, all of a sudden it's like it takes on a different kind of feeling. And also, again, you are disregarding the relationship. So here's the real analogy. What if your child is in the hospital because of something you did, and they need to be hooked up to you for a short period of time in order to survive?
Well, no, but we're talking about rape.
I know, but would it be acceptable to, because you don't want to be hooked up to your child, to put a pillow over their face and just kill them?
Well, of course not.
Right. So that's you can't ignore the relationship, and I don't know why it's a problem to just say, just like we say to parents of born children, no matter how the kid was born, we say you are responsible for that child. You must take care of we are requiring you by law to take care of the child, or you'll go to jail, or find someone else who will.
The issue is the rape.
Well,
That's the one thing that changes all of this. Because I absolutely say, if a person chooses to engage in these behaviors, they have accepted that responsibility and they must adhere to that responsibility. But if a woman is walking through a park on her way home, and it's 5 p.m. and someone grabs her and drags her into a lobby or something, or into an alley, and then she rushes to the hospital and they do a check. Then a few weeks later, she finds out she's pregnant and says, I never chose this. I resisted. They forced it upon me, and I do not want to provide my body to another person. Would the state then say, we don't care,
yes.
you have to?
Well, yeah, and I think this is where the argument gets stupid in our society. We see this amaze sex education for children, and I was reading through some of their PDFs that was talking about rape specifically that I thought was fascinating, because it was talking about the need for consent, and there was a situation that was so outrageous that would never happen. And I noticed something interesting. It goes, everyone was there at a baseball game at Philip and Jackson's house, and Bethany had drank too much alcohol And I thought, wait a second. We're about to talk about sex and consent. Now we're starting this with underage drinking. Okay, so there's already the problem here isn't. What I'm trying to say is the problem here isn't the consent. The problem would be the underage drinking we should work on, because that's clearly what's leading to the behavior. When we talk about the rape though with children, the key thing is, and this is what I'm saying, when we talk about rape, this is why they try to redefine even what rape is in college, where they say a rape is if you regret it afterwards. A rape if you. But I'm being serious. I'm genuinely being serious. The problem with the rape argument is that, you're going, okay, if someone was forcibly, I'm not going to get graphic, but there's a violent crime that is heinous against a woman's body, and she's forcibly impregnated. Well, number one, that's not the definition legally of rape anymore, and specifically socially, people just say rape can almost be like gender. It's if you just regretted it later in life. I'm genuinely being serious about that.
I don't care about the left's arguments on this.
Well, it does argue legally, though. I'm saying, but in the forcible situation...
My point is, for you, not legally, for all of you, for your morals and principles, I have no problem if your answer is the woman must be forced. My attitude is that freaks me out. I'm not okay with that.
To answer your specific question. So we can all agree that if a woman is impregnated through violent, like forcible rape, it's a horrible, unthinkable crime that was committed against her, which is why I think go ahead and I'm all about executing rapists if they're found guilty. But you have a person. A person was created, and they exist now. And so the question is, does that person have moral worth? Do they have any human rights at all? Or are we going to say that the manner of your conception determines whether you have moral worth and human rights? And I'm freaked out by that. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, real quick, just to wrap, I understand, too, that, in the instance a woman is raped, she will have the kid, she will not die. In this circumstance, you're saying kill someone, or a woman has a child for, is pregnant for 9 months and then gives birth.
I have a lot of issues with this scenario as well, Tim. I have a very similar perspective to yours. In the event that you're raped, let's say by your father, and you're 15 years old, are you then forced to have that child? Are you forced to raise that child? Are you forced to look at that child every day and see that your father raped you when you're 15 years old? Well, that exists, but that happens, right?
That happens. Is the framing. It's, are you allowed to kill a child ever?
Well, I don't think that's entirely the framing.
So the kid's born in illegal activities. I
think there's more to it than that, right? I do think there's more to it than that. I think a big problem with the abortion conversation is how far it's gone, to the point where you have people, in arguing that you should be able to abort for, illnesses, that you should be able to abort for deformities, that you should be able to abort for, getting the biological sex that you want, all of these things. Like, having all of this extra stuff in this conversation, saying all of these various reasons that you could abort your child, that you should be able to, kill your baby up to the point of delivery, and all of this. This has made this conversation so insane that we completely forget, where it sort of started, which was the idea that it would be safe, legal, and rare. I'm not in favor of abortion. It's not something that I would do for myself. I don't know what I would do if I was, a teen who had been raped, whatever else it is. I think that it makes sense to discuss a woman's life and what that life is going to be like after she has been forcibly impregnated by, some horrible person. I don't think also the idea that once this woman has been forcibly impregnated, we're going to kill the man who did it so that now she can't even get child support from this guy. You can't do anything. That's insane too.
But how is it not insane?
I'm 100% thoroughly opposed to capital punishment in every single circumstance.
I just want to make one point before you jump in here. I think it's morally insane to say that if somebody rapes a woman and she becomes pregnant, it's ethically permissible to murder the child, but not to put the rapist to death.
Well, right, and isn't it okay? I'm not aware of any reason to be pro-life other than the two that I gave. That the life in the womb is a human life, and it is never okay to intentionally and directly kill innocent human life. That's my whole reason for being pro-life. I can't think of any other reason. And so, if that's your reason for being pro-life, then you can't make exceptions. You can't say, well, unless the baby's conceived through rape. It's morally incoherent.
I think that it makes sense to talk to this woman, this hypothetical raped person that we're talking about. It makes sense to talk to them and to encourage them to have a child if they have the means and whatever else and the mental capability to do that. But I don't think that it should be the federal government making that determination.
There's an interesting point here as if we try to create a value system on like moral points, what is more morally weighted, then I think I understand a bit of the conversation. It's that a woman will suffer a physical constraint and large inconvenience and potentially trauma being forced to carry this child, but she'll live and the baby won't. So I understand that point. There's a challenge for me in the idea of just the extent to which society has power over other people's bodies, but I totally see what you guys are saying 100%. Like, the woman will not die by having a baby and being pregnant for 9 months. The baby will die. And if we want to maximize good, the challenge is, does the state then say, you're going to sacrifice for 9 months and, have this as a part of you for the rest of your life, but at least 2 people survive in the long run? It's tough questions, man.
I think the other thing is sometimes what gets mixed into this conversation is like there's 2 questions about the act itself and then kind of the moral guilt of the person who participates in the act. And I certainly believe that your moral guilt participating in the act, when I'm talking about abortion, could be severely mitigated if we're talking about a child who's and is being taken advantage of by the abortion industry as well. So that's sort of like a different discussion about the woman and her own moral guilt and the levels and the mitigating circumstances. But there's still just the question of the act itself and what this life that's being killed. Is it a life? That's the question. And are you directly killing it? And is it ever okay to directly kill an innocent human life? That's the question.
One last question on this before we go to the next story. If we develop the technology that can take a fertilized egg even, day one. And
this is a question I always have as well. The point of viability.
If the point of viability becomes day one, minute one, we can take it and put it into some kind of machine or technology that will allow it to live. Would you guys accept that?
Transhumanism?
It is to a certain extent. It's a very Huxley question, right? So the question becomes then, whose responsibility is this child? Are we going to be manufacturing parentless orphans in order
wards of the state?
Wards of the state. Is this what we're doing? Because the state does an amazing job right now raising orphans, right? They do really just such stellar work. It's gorgeous. We've seen the results of this. Of course, it's spectacular.
Sarcasm.
Just a teeny weensy bit, right? So we've seen that. So my question with this, because this has been something that I've considered as well, who raises the children? Who gets to tell them what to do? Who teaches them sex ed? Who teaches them whether or not to, castrate themselves because they think they should be something else? And are we going to create a class of citizens that are responsible to the state, that the state is responsible for? What is this, like this weird stormtrooper thing we've got going?
Well, they could be put up for adoption, maybe.
They could be put up for adoption, but who's going to adopt these kids?
Just real quick, I want to get your guys' thought on this. If, a woman in any... So let's take two forms of this question. One is, if a woman gets pregnant through any circumstance, and then she says, oh, I'm going to place the baby into, proto-future development, and then the doctors transplant it, it survives, would you be okay with that? And the second question is, if a woman was forced through rape and they said, we're sorry this happened to you, but we can take the baby out and it'll survive and grow in this external process, how would you feel about that?
I want to mention one thing. When I last checked the statistics in 2019, there were actually twice as many couples on the waiting list to adopt than there were abortions that happened in the country that year. So I do think there would be people willing to adopt. But as for this theological, right. I'm curious what your answer is here. I'll jump on, but it's...
I thought you were going to give your answer. Now you're saying you want
now I want yours. I want to see
a question.
I mean, okay. I have an answer, but I just wanted to interject with that before we got into it.
So the scenario is a woman is raped, child is conceived. There's an option, though, to remove the child...
And it will grow and survive.
And put the child into like an artificial womb.
Yeah.
I mean, if the other option is killing the child, then I certainly would prefer the artificial womb scenario.
Let's say the other option is just saying no abortion. You can't. You have to have the baby. Should the woman be like, no, you can't make me do this. I never chose this. Should we go with artificial womb or?
I think there's a complicated there's a complicated moral question here for a few reasons. I mean, firstly, would this be something that was 100% effective, or would it pose a risk to the life of the child? And then if it is, my answer to this question would be that there are
that's fantastical, but okay.
This is a technology that it hasn't developed. There's nothing like it that exists, and so my response here is that there are, gray-haired theologians with beards much better and longer than mine who can sort of stroke them all day and come up with much better answers to this question than I ever could. I'm not sure. And that's who I would defer to if they come along.
I do think it's kind of an interesting question, because obviously we've talked recently even about IVF and this idea people keep talking about renting wombs. Even
that's surrogacy.
Yes, but I mean more slang has been this womb rental that has kind of like plagued Twitter, where people are arguing about this, and not just surrogacy, but also like talking about when it's just, for instance, from a donor and also from the original person, and what are the ethics of this. And obviously,
surrogacy is prostitution, except you get screwed for 9 months.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, I mean, I've met some surrogates, and it's been a very interesting conversation, especially when meeting one girl who was a surrogate, and the baby had some sort of a defect, and the people who were using the surrogate wanted her to abort her kid, and she didn't want to abort the kid, and then when she gave birth, the baby was just taken from her, and she doesn't know what happened to the child. And I've had this story. I've spoken to her about it, so it is an interesting thing. But this idea of transhumanism is two things. I don't think it's going to happen like you think, where there's just this lab and we're taking these rare rape victims. Because I think we always use this very niche argument of like, could we create a technology where if there's this rare time, even let's say a mom is dying from cancer and the dad wants to keep the baby, and we could take the baby out and grow the baby in this artificial womb. You know what? In many ways, it sounds amazing in ethical places in an ethical nation. But all I see right now is the movement for that technology so that men can get pregnant. And that's what I've seen with this trans woman thing. They say trans women will give birth. So I don't see us moving towards an ethical development of technology in this world for the basis of trying to do what's right. I see us for trying to go outside the design of humanity, whether you're a Christian, the design of God, or you're not a Christian, the biological mechanisms that create a stable species. I don't think that we are developing things for the right motives, so I'd have to say it's not even theological for me. I say no.
I think
let me pull up the story real quick.
The interesting thing to me is I think we're just looking for what the right answer is in every circumstance, right? We're looking for the Kantian categorical imperative.
Real quick, it is an interesting question, but the thing is, developing this technology where hypothetically you could put a child at the very early stages into like an artificial womb. I think it's good to develop that kind of technology for the situation we were talking about at the beginning, which is in a medical emergency, to be able to do that. But then you realize that there would be these abuses where now it's kind of just a convenience thing. Let's take the child out and put him in the artificial womb, and that's a bad thing.
And that's the thing about technology, is it would turn into that instantly. Yeah, women would be like, well, why should I ruin my body for this when we can put it in an artificial womb?
Well, we saw that, right? Like Kim Kardashian had babies via surrogate.
And I think okay, I just want to say, even intuitively, when we look at this potential technology, this hypothetical device, no one would argue that it would be better for a child to develop in an artificial womb rather than within the body of their own mother. So at the very least, there would need to be some kind of justification, the likes of which you laid out, these scenarios where a child needs to be delivered early.
I think we have no idea what the effect
if it was death or artificial womb, you'd take artificial.
I don't know what the effect of creating motherless orphans would be. I think that is really something that hasn't been explored. To not know your mother in that sense. We have not seen a human being who doesn't know their mother in that sense, and I think that we would end up with something a little along the lines of a sociopathic, crazy person.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.